What if the most guarded secret in modern Chinese stardom was never hidden at all, but simply waiting for the quietest day of the year to reveal itself? Right now, right before the next revelation, is your chance to stay connected. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another powerful story, another shocking twist, or another unforgettable journey. On Christmas morning, when the world slowed down and the noise of deadlines, paparazzi, and trending lists briefly fell silent, a single idea began to move through fan circles like a held breath. Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo together, not on a set, not at an awards show, not under studio lights, but in private, choosing Christmas, choosing each other. This is not the story of a public announcement, because there was none. It is the story of absence, of noise, of patterns noticed only by those who have watched carefully for years. Two men whose lives have been lived under relentless observation suddenly disappeared from the places they were expected to be. No holiday greetings filmed, no crowded family photos, no visible schedules, just a rare stillness. And sometimes stillness speaks louder than any confession. To understand why this moment feels seismic, you have to go back to where it all began. Two young actors crossing paths in a production that would change the trajectory of their lives. The Untamed was more than a drama. It was a cultural event, a phenomenon that fused fantasy, loyalty, sacrifice, and an emotional intensity that spilled far beyond the screen. What viewers felt between their characters was undeniable, but what lingered long after the final episode was something harder to define and ease. Familiarity, a way of looking at each other that cameras did not seem to manufacture. Fame came fast, and with it came separation, not personal separation, but professional distance, carefully managed schedules, different projects, different public narratives. Yet no matter how far apart they appeared, their names never truly stopped traveling together. Fans noticed the coincidences, the mirrored interviews, the shared silences, the way questions about each other were never answered directly, but never dismissed either. Years past, careers soared. Xiao Zhan became a symbol of resilience, elegance, and emotional depth. Wang Yibo evolved into an icon of cool discipline and controlled intensity. On the surface, they stood in different worlds, but beneath it all, the timeline kept bending back on itself. The same cities at the same times, unexplained overlaps, private flights, quiet visits that never made headlines. Then Christmas arrived. Christmas is not traditionally loud in their world. It is intimate, reflective, a pause borrowed from the West, but embraced by those who understand its symbolism. Togetherness, chosen family sanctuary. On this particular Christmas, both men went unusually quiet. Social media slowed, official accounts posted neutral seasonal messages without personal context. Insiders whispered that schedules had been cleared last minute, that assistants were instructed to step back, that privacy was requested not for rest, but for something more deliberate. And then came the smallest details, the kind that only become obvious after they have already passed. Similar scenery glimpsed in unrelated photos, the same muted winter light, the same understated decor, the same sense of warmth that did not belong to a hotel or a studio, but to a lived-in space. No faces together, no confirmation, yet everything aligned. Those who believe say this is exactly how it would happen, not with a headline, not with a declaration, but with a choice to spend the one day of the year that asks nothing from you except presence together. Imagine it, not the fantasy version, but the real one, a quiet room, soft light, the sound of a city outside continuing without them. Two men who have carried expectations, projections, and pressures sitting across from each other, without costumes, without scripts, without roles to play, just Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo, exactly as they are when the world is not watching. If they are a couple, this is what makes it powerful, not the secrecy, but the intentional privacy. Love, not as spectacle, but as shelter. For years, narratives have tried to define them individually: hero, idol, trendsetter, survivor. But Christmas strips all of that away. It asks a simpler question: who do you choose when you are allowed to choose freely? And if the answer is each other, then suddenly every past moment looks different. The loyalty, the restraint, the careful distance that was never cold, but protective, the way neither ever exploited the other for attention despite knowing the power of that association. This Christmas story is not about proving anything. It is about possibility, about the idea that in an industry built on exposure, the most meaningful truths are often lived quietly. Perhaps they exchanged gifts that were not extravagant, but personal: a book, a record, a shared memory turned tangible. Perhaps they cooked or ordered in, or simply sat together letting the day pass without obligation. Perhaps nothing dramatic happened at all, and perhaps that is exactly the point. Because the greatest revelation is not that Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo may have spent Christmas together as a couple. The revelation is that after everything fame is taken from them, they may have found a way to keep something real untouched. And until either of them chooses to speak, the story will remain where it belongs, in the spaces between moments, in the soft certainty that some connections do not need confirmation to be felt. Sometimes love does not arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives quietly on Christmas morning and stays off camera, exactly where it is safest. And yet the story does not end with Christmas morning, because moments like these never truly do. They ripple outward, backward, and inward, reshaping everything that came before and everything that follows. After Christmas, the world resumed its noise, schedules restarted, cameras turned back on, headlines chased fresher drama, but something subtle had shifted, not enough to trend, not enough to confirm, but enough to feel. Those who watched closely noticed a softness returning, the guarded edges slightly eased, interviews carried a calmer rhythm, as if something inside had settled, smiles appeared unforced, not brighter, just steadier, the kind that comes when you are no longer waiting for something, because it has already arrived. If they did spend Christmas together, it was not an escape from reality, but a quiet act of defiance against it, an insistence that even under the weight of expectation, two people are allowed a private truth. Think about what that requires: not secrecy born of fear, but discipline born of care, to love in a way that does not demand validation, to protect something precious by keeping it small and unannounced. In an era where every emotion is expected to be monetized, choosing silence becomes a radical gesture. For Xiao Zhan, silence has always been a form of strength. He learned early how quickly public affection can turn, how survival sometimes means patience, dignity, and restraint. For Wang Yibo, silence has been a language of its own, a place where meaning lives between words, where loyalty is shown through presence, not proclamation. Together, those silences would not clash, they would fit. And perhaps that is why the idea of them as a couple endures, not because of fantasy, but because of compatibility, a shared understanding of what it costs to be visible, a shared instinct to guard what matters most. Christmas would have offered them a rare permission slip: no premieres, no expectations, no need to perform happiness for anyone else, just time. Time to look at each other without counting seconds. Time to speak freely, or not speak at all. Time to exist without an audience. In that space, roles dissolve, the idol, the actor, the symbol, the controversy, all of it fades, and what remains is something simpler and infinitely more fragile: two people deciding whether the quiet feels right. And if it does, then the world does not need to know. This is why there are no photos, no accidental leaks, no dramatic reveals, because a love that has survived years of distance, speculation, and restraint would not announce itself with recklessness. It would move carefully, deliberately, honoring the cost of every step. Some stories are written in headlines, others are written in habits, in where you go when you finally have a choice, in whose presence feels like rest. Christmas is past, but its meaning lingers, not as proof, but as possibility. Maybe they return to their separate paths afterward, professional lives unfolding as expected, public narratives intact, but something would have traveled with them into the new year: a memory, a promise, or simply the knowledge that somewhere in the world there is one person with whom silence is not empty. And that changes everything. So the question is no longer, did Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo spend Christmas together as a couple? The real question is this: if they did, and if it was enough, would we ever be meant to know? Some love stories are not meant to be witnessed. They are meant to be lived quietly and carried forward, unseen, steady, and real, long after the decorations are packed away and the world moves on.